Welcome back to this second tutorial for Outgunned. As always, I am Rico, one of the designer of this RPG. And today I want to guide you through all the enemies and how you as a director, as a GM, can use these enemies, can customize these enemies to make exciting fight scenes for your heroes. Now, when it comes to enemies, in Outgunned, you will actually find three different kind of enemies that you can see here on my right. The goons, which has your, they are goons. They are not going to harm heroes, at least not too much, but it's always good to have some goons to throw into the fight. And then you have the bad guys, which are really the core of this system of Outgunned. Most of your fights are going to be against bad guys. And then we have the bosses, which are extremely hard, if not sometimes almost impossible to beat, depending on your group of heroes. Now, first of all, I should say or should remind you that when it comes to enemy, Outgunned always has the group of heroes against one single enemy, because an enemy in Outgunned can actually represent a group of enemy. So if I have to throw some goons, I will choose one of the templates for goons, and this will represent a whole bunch of them. Maybe there's more of them then there's heroes in the scenes, but they are still going to be considered as one enemies. Now, these are the different types of enemies. So goons, bad guys, and bosses. And each of these type of enemy is further divided into 5 different templates, or maybe I should say there are 5 different templates for each of these type of enemy. Going from template 1 to template 5, these goons and bad guys and bosses are going to become stronger and stronger and stronger. So basically, every one of these templates that you see, for example, for goons, represent a single enemy or group of enemy that you can throw against your heroes. Now, an enemy basically is composed of 3 characteristics. One, it's their grit, which are those little red shields on the left. And basically, grit is the number of time you have to hit them in order to defeat them. When they've filled all their grit, this means that they are lost all of their grit and they are out of the fight, either captured or they're going to run away or they get killed. Then they have an attack value and a defense value, and either of them, they can be a basic, critical, or extreme, or in some cases in the attack can also be too basic or too critical. Now, the defense of an enemy means the kind of success that you need to achieve in order to hit them, in order to make them lose one of their grit. For example, if we take a look at the goons template 2, we'll notice that they have 6 grit and basic defense, which means that for every basic success that the hero achieve in their action turn, their goons will lose 1 grit, and when they lose 6, they are KO. As always, remember the rule 3 equals 1. That means and 1 equals 3, which means that 3 basic success count as a critical success, while 1 critical success also count as 3 basic successes. That means that with a critical success against the goons template 2, for example, which have basic defense, I'm going to hit them 3 times. So there's 3 grit lost for them. On the other hand, the attack means that whenever I have to defend as a hero, from these goons, I will need 2 basic success in order to avoid any loss of grid. Now, as you probably know, combat in Outgunned is divided in 2 different phases, the action turn and the reaction turn. And Outgunned is all player faced, so it's basically only the heroes are rolling dice. The director, the GM, is actually never rolling the dice for the enemy. So in the action turn, you will have the heroes deciding what to do, describing direction, using different skills to try and hit their enemy and try to win against their defense. While in the reaction turn, you will have as a director, you will have to describe the action of the goons, for example, and then ask for a specific role to your heroes. And you can either ask all of the heroes for the same role, which is actually preferred most of the time, or you can actually ask different roles for different heroes depending on the current situation. And for example, in the attack turn, an hero might say, I want to shoot at the goons, and they will roll shoot and the nerves. If they get a basic success, they hit their target. And then in the reaction turn, as a director, I would say something like, now the goons try to surrender you, so everybody has to roll for example, stealth, but under brown, because we are actually fighting, so there is a tense situation. So by asking different reaction rolls during the reaction turn, I can actually make the goons more powerful, or the enemies more powerful, relying on the different strength and weaknesses. And I also can get some movement to the combat without needing to roll the dice myself as a GM. Very important about the grid. The grid loss can be represented as you prefer. So if, for example, one goon lose 1 grid, this can mean that you have just hit them very hard, or you have put one of the goons KO. A rule of thumb, you can say, especially for goons, because we expect goons to be large group, you can say that for any grid, for any shield, there is 1 goon actually in the scene. So every time a hero deals 1 damage, they are going to put one of the goons KO until there's no one left. Or you can say they are much larger group, and for every shield, for any grid that they lose, they will actually, that means that the heroes have defeated 3 or 4 of them altogether. But this is all about preparing the scene and describing stuff that's not related to actual grid loss. For the purpose of the game, a single enemy represents a group of enemy, and a group of enemy has this huge health bar, which is represented by their grid. So how do you choose between goons, bad guys, and bosses? Well, you choose goons if you really don't want to give your heroes a real challenge. Apart from, let's say, goons template 4, template 5, the first 3 templates are really easy, so I would personally use them in 3 possible scenarios. 1, there is a very weak member of the group who is alone, like we have a brain, some hero have chosen brain as their role, and they are alone, and there is a couple of guards chasing them, and then I will give them goons template 1, because that's what they can handle, right? Or for example, I know that this is going to be a series of challenges, of dangers, one after the other, so I don't want to stress my heroes too much, so let's give them a goons template 3 for starter. Another scenario is that I want to weaken them before going to a more difficult enemy, difficult, a more hard, I would say, enemy. So let's start with some goon and then some bad guys arrive. And then the bad guys are going to be, as said, the core of this game. You're going to rely a lot on the bad guys. And bad guys template 1, template 2, and even template 3 are going to be your favorite choice most of the time when you want to give a real challenge, but not too much of a challenge. It's hard that your heroes are going to lose against bad guys template 1 or template 2, but still they can get hurt. Now, as you notice, some of that, especially the bad guys, have an attack of 2 criticals. This means that bad guys can deal twice the damage, basically, but you are only going to roll the dice twice. So if you know a little bit about the Outgunned rules when it comes to dangerous rolls, like the reaction rolls against enemies, every time you fail a basic, against a basic you lose 1 grit, every time you fail against a critical you lose 3 grit, and against an extreme you lose 9 grit, which is a lot because you only have 12 grit. And you can use lower successes to do what we call damage control, so to avoid, like, I need a critical, I score a basic, I should lose 3, but thanks to the basic I only lose 2, that kind of stuff. But it's all in the rules. Now I'm focusing on the actual enemies. Now when it comes to enemy, when an enemy has 2 critical as an attack, it means that you will need 2 critical or an extreme success in order to avoid any grit loss. And that means that once your enemies start having the 2 critical attack, they start to get dangerous, especially for those heroes who are not so skilled in, fight or stand or all that physical skills. You will notice also that starting from the bad guys, you started to see those little flames on some of the shields. These are what we call the hot boxes, but I will leave them aside for a minute because they are completely optional. So you can play just by disregarding them, not considering them. Higher we have the bosses, and bosses are extremely hard to defeat. In fact, all of their attack are extreme, which means you most often than not, your heroes are not going to be able, this is extremely important that you also let them know, they are not going to be able to actually defend from the whole attack of a boss. They are going to suffer some grit. So for example, if against a boss I only have 2 critical success, I can damage control up to 6 grit, I still take 3 grit, that's a win. That should be perceived as a win because bosses are stronger. We're talking about bears, ninjas, and all that kind of stuff from movies. Now the template 1 and 2, they still have critical defenses, so they are still pretty manageable. They will hit hard, but glass cannon, you can still fight against them. The boss template 3, it's a bit harder because they have a lot of grit. This is an excruciating fight when you really want your heroes to hit the boss, so you give them critical defense, but you also want the fight to be a little bit longer than your usual fight, which is usually 3-4 turns tops. And then we move to the boss template 4, which is the overall strong boss that it's going to be hard to being defeated. And then the boss template 5, which is insane. They are really, really, really hard because you can always spend the spotlight to achieve an extreme success. So template 4, you can always rely on on your heroes to spend their spotlight to deal some damage. But on template 5, it's going to be hard. They're going to be skilled for the fight. And that's basically everything you need to know. In the core book, there is a list of suggested, reaction roll. that you can ask to your player. Also in the pre-made adventure there are some reaction roles suggested for different enemies. And also there are examples, this little writing in red, of how you should perceive this kind. For example, a boss template 1, we say a team of elite soldier or a massive crime boss, like, you know, your kingpin is going to be a boss template 1. So you get some ideas, but you can feel free to choose the template that you think works best. And the first 2 or 3 times it's probably going to be a little bit harder to balance, but you can always rely on, you know, the bad guys template 1, 2, 3, up to 3, to try and test the waters, and that your heroes will become more skilled and you will become more confident, and you will see how boss become manageable with good resources, you know, management from the heroes. Now, there is also one thing that I want to mention about enemies, that enemies might have a weak spot, or at least they should have a weak spot. Now, weak spots are little situation you can take advantage from to gain the upper end on your enemies. What's the purpose of weak spot? Not only a weak spot will make things easier for the heroes, but will also serve 2 main purposes. First of all, the weak spots will allow a lot of differences in different fights. Some other will force you, in order to take advantage of the weak spot, to use specific skill or perform specific task, and this will hopefully will give a lot of variety to your fights. But also, finding a weak spot require specific action, and I'm going to explain it in a little bit. And these actions require no fighting skill. So stay a little bit out of the fight and looking for the weak spot is the perfect example of how weaker character, you know, if you are playing a nobody based on brawn and focus, you are not going to be extremely good at shooting or throwing punches, but you still can help in the hardest scenarios. You can help your group by finding the weak spot of an enemy, and that's a classic, you know, cinematic scenario when you have the big hero fighting and someone in the background that's looking for clues, trying to find the weak enemies, and then he shouts, "You should hit him from the back," or something like that. That's a weak spot. There's something that will give you a hint, and you can take advantage of that. Now, how weak spots works? You, instead of using your action to actually try and hit the enemy, you can use your action to try and find the weak spot. You will have to either make a roll in detect, or you will have to use one of your features, because some of the feats actually give you the ability to find the weak spot without needing to rolling the dice. After you found the weak spot, the GM will roll 2d6 and will generate one of the weak spot from one of the 3 tables on the right. And that's it. And you can choose either to keep the weak spot for you or to share it with all of your heroes, and that will not require an action. This is really a fun way to give different character different things to do, and it's one of my favorite features, you know, about enemies. And of course, only one weak spot per enemy. So enemies only have 1 weak spot. Once you found that weak spot, you cannot look for another for the whole fight. Now, this is the basic. This is how they work. If you want to further, you know, enhance your experience, if you want to give a challenge to your heroes, if you want to add a little bit of, you know, of crunch, of tactical game to your, you know, to you as a director, you can use 2 optional features of the bad guys. One are the feats of the enemies. One are the feats, and one are the special actions. If you decide to use the feats, you will notice that right under the name of bad guys and goons, there's written how many feat points they have. So goons will have just 1 feat point, and bad guys have 3 feat points, and bosses have 5 feat points. What can you do with these points? You can spend them to buy them feats. You will see that in the core book there are feats that cost 1 point, 2 point, or even 3 point. And for example, you can buy your goons the Sharp Blades feat that says heroes who fail to score at least 1 basic success during the reaction turn become hurt, and if they are already hurt, they lose 1 additional grit. Heroes with knives or sword can ignore this feat. Or the Bulletproof Vest, so heroes will suffer -1 when rolling to hit the enemy with firearms or other ranged weapon. And by giving different feats to your enemy, you can actually customize them. So bad guys, yeah, they're hard to beat, but bad guys with bulletproof vests and automatic weapons, there's a whole different stories, and they are going to be an extremely different enemies from the same bad guys, same template, but with the mob and sharp blade feature. And as you will see on the core book, as you go to level 3 features, they're going to be extremely strong, of course. If features are not enough, and features, by the way, it's something easier because you can choose before the fight. You can take note, there is a director sheet when you can take note of all that kind of stuff, and you don't have to actually do anything during the fight. They're only going to be there passively. But if you want to take part to the fight because you like to engage, with your heroes, with your players, you can use special actions. Now, what are special actions? I've told you before that there are these hot boxes among the grit shields of the enemies, and basically what they do is that every time as a director you fill one of these hot boxes, you receive 1 adrenaline. You can use token for adrenaline. You can take note on the character sheets. There are also cards, I have them somewhere, that we did during the Kickstarter for adrenaline. But still, once you have your first adrenaline, and you can collect up to 3 by, as the enemies accumulate, damage and lose grit, you can choose either to spend 1 adrenaline to perform a feat, or you can continue to accumulate adrenaline to perform better special actions. So what are special actions? Special actions are actions performed by the enemies that will stop the fight and will just come and, do some damage to the enemy, change the rules a little bit, to the hero, change the rules a little bit. There are cutscenes, something that happens and interrupts the fight. You're going to find on the core book special actions that requires 1 adrenaline, 2 adrenaline, or even 3 adrenaline. And you can perform them anytime, provided that you have the needed adrenaline. So, for example, if I have 1 adrenaline, I can choose to use, for example, I don't think so, which is my favorite special action that says when a hero uses any feat that requires them to spend some adrenaline, the enemy promptly intervene to stop them. So basically make one hero waste their adrenaline. Or, for example, tackle. An enemy charges towards a hero, tackling them head down, and if the hero fails a critical reaction roll in Brawn plus Force, they will lose their footing and suffer -1 to their next roll. Now, on the other hand, I can also, keep my adrenaline and try to reach more adrenaline in order to perform a 2 adrenaline special action, or even a 3. And of course, they're going to become stronger and stronger the more adrenaline I spend on them. Now, this is totally optional. You don't have to do this for every fight, but you can do it when you want to give your heroes a challenge, want to make the fight a little bit longer. Um, and the other cool thing about this special action is that they will, really change how the fight is fought, because the heroes actually don't know when they're going to hit one of these hot boxes, and some of these special action can actually break their initiative. They can for example, some of them can attack the last heroes who have dealt some damage, who might be not the best hero to take that special action on themselves. So they're going to add a little bit of fear in your heroes, as they don't know when or what might happen anytime. Now, if you feel confident with the system, if you are familiar with the system, you don't need to choose beforehand which special action your enemy is going to be able to perform. You can just choose during the fight what you prefer, depending on how the fight is going. But for the first time, especially if you are new to the game and you are trying special actions for the first time, my advice would be choose a couple of 1 adrenaline, 2 adrenaline, 1, 3 adrenaline special actions that your enemy is able to perform. Make a little pool of special actions to choose from during the fight, so you don't get lost and the fight doesn't get boring for your heroes. So for example, I can say that my bad guys are able to counter or disarm 1 adrenaline special actions, but they do not have flashbang or do not have the ability to tackle or to grab and throw, and that will make it easier for me to manage them. But as said, special actions and feature are totally, completely optional. One last thing about enemy, I think we have covered basically everything, but one last thing, there is another type of enemy that we haven't talked about, which is what we call the cannon fodder. And the cannon fodder, they are on the director screen, on the director sheet, they are on the core book in a little box dedicated to them. They are basically 2 kind of enemy, one basic and one critical, that's like one size fit all enemies. So basically, whenever you don't know what to do with your heroes, you can throw them a critical cannon fodder or even a basic cannon fodder, just because maybe they're running some trouble and you don't want to spend too much time on them, or you haven't prepared for them and you want to play safe. So cannon fodder is always there for you whenever there is a need for them, so use them. Thank you very much for being here. This was our second tutorial for Outgunned about enemies. Let us know what you think and if you tried the game, and what kind of feature or special actions you will like to see implemented in the next Outgunned supplements.